Happy Saturday. It is time to start making dinner. Tonight we are going to do a baked chicken leg quarter, which is the thigh and the drumstick, kind of combined together, and we're going to do a homemade mac and cheese. We're not making the pasta from scratch, no. We're going to use box pasta for it, but we're going to make our own cheese sauce. And to help today is Suzy, who's going to head over here. Super easy tonight. It's going to be a lot of time in the oven, and this is something, if you have anyone in the house interested in cooking, there's Suzy. We're going to do it. So I just have a sheet pan with a couple of leg quarters. On top of it is a seasoning of some paprika, some black pepper, some garlic, some salt, just kind of there to flavor it. One thing I'm going to do before anything is take some butter. So Suzy's going to grab a little knife, a little steak knife. And Suzy's a vegetarian in the house, so I'm going to handle the chicken stuff so she doesn't freak out too much. But since I'm doing a chicken with skin on, I want to add a little bit of fat that's going to help crisp it up. And that's really kind of anytime you're doing a skin on thing. So I'm just going to take some pats of butter and just set them right on top. They will melt in the oven and they will be fantastic. This shouldn't take that long, so I'm cooking it a little bit early. I'm going to cook it for maybe 40 minutes or so. My oven is preheated to 375, and it's thigh meat, so I want to get that thigh meat up to about 165 when we're done. So here it goes. It's going to go in the oven. It's not going to go in the oven. Oh my gosh, I just looked. It's not preheated yet. So the oven's going to preheat, and I'm going to set this off to the side. Okay. Oh, hang on. Suzy has you have to come over here.
What's up?
Okay. She has a great attitude, huh?
Yeah, other people watching this, I think.
Yes. All right, so now we are going to start working on the mac and cheese. On the stovetop here, Suzy's going to eventually come back here, but we have boiling water. It's going to be boiling soon in a pot. We'll cook the macaroni there. We can do that ahead of time if you're doing this. No problem. You take the mac. You want to pull it off so that it's still definitely al dente. Do not get it fully cooked, like almost a minute before al dente, because it's going to finish cooking in the oven. The other thing we're going to do is make bechamel. And that bechamel is going to be what we add the cheese into. All bechamel sauce, it's the easiest thing. It just sounds super fancy because it's a French word. It starts with roux, which is equal parts of flour and butter, and that's the thickener. And you've made that if you've done like gravy at Thanksgiving. So Suzy's going to come over here and show you how to make a roux.
I don't know.
We're going to walk you through it all at the same time. So we have our saucepan. It's going to be at about maybe a little bit below medium. So that's in there. So Suzy's going to take a stick of butter. And if you look on, Suzy, if you show everyone the stick of butter, on the side, it actually shows you how much is in the stick. So come on up to the camera right there. So right there, it's kind of giving you these little cheater things. So we know that for this big thing of mac and cheese, we want to probably be at right around a quarter cup of butter. So that's about a half a stick. Shows you right there.
Should I cut it with the wrapper on?
You can cut it with the wrapper on, no problem. So the cool thing is, I like the way that she ripped it because now she can take that little piece of wrapper that ripped and keep the end a little fresher. And so that's going to go back in the fridge. And Suzy's going to take this butter, and we want to start to slow melt the butter. So what Suzy's going to do is, the easiest way to slow melt it is we're going to actually cut this into pats so that the surface area is touching the pan. So we'll cut it into maybe 4 pieces, and then it'll go right into that pan that is at just under medium. And if it's 3, that's fine. If it's 6, that's fine. There's no exact science or anything to it, but we just want to get the butter slowly melted and before the point that it separates. So that butter is going to go right in, and then she'll throw away the butter wrapper. Look at that. Child labor, yes, we have child labor here. All right, so now we're going to measure a little bit of flour. So Suzy is rinsing her hands, so I guess while this butter is melting, I will take a quarter cup of flour. So a little 1/4 cup guy. And that's going to go in. And this we want to be a little more exact maybe than like a sprinkle of this, a sprinkle of that. Because if you put too much flour, too little butter, it's going to be, it'll get granularly. You really want to have that kind of equal amount. So Suzy's going to put the flour in. While she's adding the flour in, I'm going to bring this over. She'll end up mixing. So here goes Suzy. She's not going to dump it all in at once. She's going to kind of slowly go in, and then she's going to start stirring it in so it doesn't clump up too much. So she is going to keep stirring that until the butter is fully melted and incorporates into the pan. I'm going to move this out of the way. Next part we're going to do after this is we want the flour to start to cook but not to brown too much. If you're making gumbo or something that starts with a roux, you really get that flour browned and cooked. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're doing a white sauce, a bechamel, so we want to keep it nice and light. She's going to keep stirring that. Meanwhile, I am looking. Aha, I found it. A few ways of doing this. I mean, the truly traditional French way of doing this is to add heavy cream. I don't want it to be that heavy because we're adding cheese. We're making a cheese sauce. So this bechamel is going to be a little lighter than maybe a traditional one. We're going to add a few components into it that'll help enhance the flavor. So I'm using just regular old half and half. And if you look, if you didn't know, I mean, the reason it's called half and half is because it's milk and cream. So it's going to be a lot less fat, about maybe a little more than half the fat of a heavy whipping cream. So that'll end up going in. I'm not going to incorporate everything into it right away. There are also a couple of schools of thought with this. As this is melting, she may find that if we're pouring ice cold half and half in, that it's going to get clumpy. So you can use warm milk if you're really not confident with it. But at this point, once she's comfortable here, we'll end up going to a fork and kind of using that to make sure that no clumps go in. So it's starting to bubble, which is what we like. I'll bring you back over.
Should I put this in the soup?
No, you're going to leave that right there on the cutting board. So here's where we are now. What do you think?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
Smells like pancake.
Smells like pancake mix. Well, it's flour and butter. So, oh yeah, we just got a good bubble. Look at this. So now we're starting to bubble in here. So the flour is starting to cook. It's not too high. So hope I didn't just lose you. All right. So we're going to add in some half and half, just a little bit at a time, and stir it to make sure that we're not getting any lumps. So Suzy's going to add in half and half, just a little at a time, and she's going to use the fork to stir. And you'll hear it sizzle. And she's making sure she'll see how she's kind of going around the sides of the pot there and scraping. She's making sure that we're keeping it nice and silky and smooth. So she's going to add some more.
It's not very silky.
Well, we're not getting there yet. Oh yeah, we're going to add a lot more liquid than that. And the other thing we can do if we want to keep it kind of a little lighter and lower is we're going to maybe use half of this container of half and half. And once she gets to halfway, she'll stop with that. So that was a pint, so we'll use about a half a pint. And then we're just going to add in some regular old low-fat milk because it'll still give the same flavor concept without adding as much fat, because remember, after we add this cheese in, it's going to be big and rich and fatty. So, are you about halfway now? Close enough? Here, let's see. Yeah, you're not halfway. So we're going to keep going, and we want to go to about there. And so at this point, we're trying to heat this cream up while she's stirring. And then we'll start adding in a little bit of milk. So here she is, she's stirring away. That's where we are now. If we wanted to do like a, oh, that actually looks like if you're doing a croque monsieur or something like that, which is that super fancy ham and cheese sandwich, that would be a great like Velveeta-y cheese sauce to make. But instead, we're trying to make something that we can pour over the mac and really incorporate. So we're going to add some of this milk. So go ahead and add the milk. We're just going to kind of eyeball. Let me bring you down. So we're going to start pouring in and go ahead and stir and pour. So we're going to keep going a little bit. And we're going to stop with the liquid right now and really try and make sure we don't have any of these lumps in there. See how creamy it's getting right now? It's looking pretty good. As the milk heats, it's going to continue to thicken. We're going to add more milk than this. This is going to be a lot by the time we're all said and done, but right now we're just kind of making sure that we don't get too lumpy. We'll scrape the sides and make sure that there aren't any little bits of flour still on there. You can use a whisk for this also. What I don't like about a whisk is that it sometimes gets caught in the middle and it's kind of difficult to get the clumps out. So once you're done with this clumpy part, you can absolutely use a whisk. So we're gonna add a little more liquid in at this point. I'm gonna turn the heat up just a little bit.
How much?
Let's go to about there, yeah. So all we're trying to do is eyeball and get to a consistency that might remind you of maybe a little more loose than that nacho cheese that you'd have at the ballpark that you pour on top of your nachos. So as this heats up, it's going to keep thickening. Suzy can also use, remember I've used in past nights, this flat edge spoon and kind of scrape along the sides and make sure that there aren't any little bits. We want to get them all incorporated in there. It's a lot more difficult than opening a box of Kraft, right? A little bit? Kind of, sort of? Okay. So she's going to keep going. A little cheater trick I'll teach Suzy right now. Instead of going straight down, because it's a round pot, you can actually go sideways and you can get a lot more. And if you're having a hard time with whatever the shape of your wooden spoon is, you can always use a rubber spatula and scrape, but we shouldn't have to. You could, if you needed to, use a rubber spatula. That beep while this is going on means that the oven is preheated. So I'm going to put the chicken in the oven at this point. So here's our chicken. It's going to go in the oven. 513 right now, so it's going to come out, I'm going to guess, around 550-ish. Always want to kind of take a mental note of when you're going to want to temp it. So at this point, if you want to and you have one, you can use a whisk. Size really doesn't matter for this. For ease, it's a little further away from the heat to use the larger whisk. The harder part with the larger whisk is you get down into those corners and it's a little tougher. So Suzy is whisking away. If you're just joining us, this is just the bechamel. The roux has been made, the flour and butter. We're adding a little bit of half and half, a little bit of low-fat milk, and then we're going to come in and add a couple little components. We're going to do a little cayenne pepper and a little bit of nutmeg. For interest, and then we're going to add some salt. So let's go to, it's always fun finding everything in the cabinet. So the cayenne pepper is right here, and then the nutmeg is right here. Kosher salt's going to go in. While she's stirring, we're going to add in a hefty pinch, so go ahead and definitely more than that. That looks pretty good. Now remember, the cheese that we're going to add in has salt as well, so we don't want to go too crazy. The other thing we're going to add in is just a little shake of cayenne pepper. Nothing to really make it spicy. It's just made to have this fruitiness of this pepper kind of open up into the sauce. So all we're going to do is one little tiny, that's it. No more than that. We'll do that. Same idea with the nutmeg. We're going to do it 2 times. I'm going to do the nutmeg. So 2 shakes. Perfect. That looks great. You can add black pepper if you like. It's not necessary at this point, though. You can always do it at the end. What do you think? Compared to nacho cheese? Pretty loose? Is it?
Yeah.
All right, so here's where we are. So Susie's going to pick up the whisk with the, try and pick up some liquid with the whisk, and that way you can see how thick it is. All right, so that's still kind of thick. We're going to add more milk. Because remember, we're adding cheese to it.
It's starting to bubble.
Which is great. So she just said it's starting to bubble. That tells us that it's too thick at this point. So we want it a little thinner than that because we want to incorporate all this cheese that we're going to shred into it. You can keep going, yeah. So I said volume-wise, it's going to get a lot more than this. That's enough. That looks good. And then if we feel that it's too thin, you can actually taste it. If you feel it's too thin, you can always add in more of either heavy cream or half and half, no problem. So it's a little time consuming, but we have a lot of that, right? And all you're doing is, this is the base of this cheese sauce. It's the base of so many different sauces. You can make a white lasagna with bechamel, like we talked about earlier. You can do basically just about anything. Alfredo sauce is made with bechamel. That looks fantastic. So she's going to keep going. That milk's going to heat up. And today we're going to use 3 cheeses for our mac and cheese. We have a little bit of sharp cheddar. For mac and cheese, I like to use the block instead of the pre-shredded because what they do with the pre-shredded cheese, they actually coat it so that it doesn't stick together. And then it doesn't melt as well. So it gets a little greasy. The block's much better. For a little extra richness, I'm going to add in just a touch of brie. And then we're going to top it with some breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese. So there's our 3rd cheese. Should be pretty good.
Is this one? Yeah, is it supposed to foam like that?
It will foam, yeah. So Susie just asked if it's supposed to foam. And as you're whisking it, it absolutely will foam. So we're just going to make sure we don't have any little bits on the side. Because sometimes solids will cling up, and you can actually see here on the fork. You can see these little solids that happen, and those come from the side of the pot. We really don't want to have any of these in there. But I think we're in pretty good shape consistency-wise. So if you only have pre-shredded cheese, don't stress. It's not that big a deal. It's a minute, a finite detail here, or difference that has the block cheese being a little creamier than the pre-shredded, but it works out just fine. Okay, so we like where we are. We're going to turn this all the way down to low. We're trying to make sure, once again, that we don't have any little bits. So this looks really cool. This will be a good base. Now we have water that we're trying to get to boiling. Unfortunately, what I have back here is a burner that doesn't go as hot as I'd like to for the size of this. So what I'm going to do at this point is move this up to here. It's going to be hot. Yep. Then we're going to move our bechamel over. So we have this guy up to high. Instead of using the towel over the water, what we're going to do, we're going to go around, absolutely. You don't want to put the towel over the top of the water because then if there's any little bits, it gets into the water. Not so nice. So I've already salted the water pretty heavily, and that's going to be our base to our pasta. Next up, shredding some cheddar. You ready? This is the manual labor. You're doing it. So we'll grab a paper towel. And all we're trying to do here is... Nope, you want to grab your cell phone. All we're trying to do here is kind of guesstimate how much cheddar we're going to use. This is a 2-pound block, pretty big. I think we're probably going to use maybe close to a third to half. But we'll eyeball it and taste it and just kind of go back and forth and see where we like it. You can go more or less than we're doing here, but this is just going to be kind of our recommendation based on our flavors. So in this, I don't want to take the whole wrapper off. I like to just kind of peel it back like this. Hold it here. So what Suzy's going to do is hold it in one hand. And she's going to have a paper towel here just in case it starts to get slippery. And then she'll hold the top of the cheese grater, and off we go.
This side?
Grating some cheese. Yep. So you really want to kind of grip it from the best spot you can, and probably go that way. It'll be a lot easier. So this is that no pain, no gain thing, right? The cheese, we're trying to create as silky smooth a cheese sauce as we can, and that's going to come a lot better from a big block of cheese like this. And if you get too tired, you let me know, and I can take over for a little bit.
Hard to hold.
What?
It's hard to hold.
Hard to hold here. I'll show you a quick
This
trick.
is easier.
Okay. So the method she's using is she's actually going at the corners and shredding that, and then turning it, and just kind of continues, and it's going to kind of make a mountaintop effect.
How much am I doing?
All right, let's see where you are. So what you can always do, so here's where she is so far. You don't have to keep this on, so what you can do is take it off and take the cheese you have and pour it into a bowl. And the nice part is, here, I'll show you what we've done, is we put a paper towel underneath the cheese grater. You can just take the paper towel, move it over, and dump the cheese right in, and you can go right back to it. So that's how much we have so far. We're going to probably double this. So I knew while we're doing this, Suzy's cousin Erin is doing the same thing up in Huntington Beach. I wonder if she's complaining about the cheese grating right now at this point, but Suzy's doing it willingly. I like it. So at this point, we're getting kind of near the wrapper. You can see where we are with the wrapper. You can, if you're not happy with where it is, what you don't want to do is grate the wrapper in there, because that'll be pretty hard to get out, and it's not really that pleasant to eat. So here, once we get to this point, instead of going with that turning method, we're going to want to go with more of a straight down. So go ahead and do that a few times straight down. All right, so now we're going to check where we are with the amount of cheese that we have. I think we're going to be in really good shape. So we're going to take this, also pour it right into the bowl. Now we have lots of cheese. This is great. Great start for sure. So we'll leave this here in place because we may need to come back to it. We're going to cut off a few chunks of brie, and for us today, I don't want to have any of the rind. Normally you can eat the rind, it's delicious. But all we're looking for is this creamy layer in the middle. So we'll pull off the outside. Oh, and notice I switched out the brie. The brie that I just had and opened, I did not love the smell of it. And Suzy's Aunt Maria just said that Erin is not grating yet. She is eating the cheese.
I'm not surprised.
And Susie's not surprised. So Susie's now going to take the macaroni and pour it into the boiling water. Now that it's boiling, the whole thing is going to go in. One thing she wants to do when she pours it in is just keep the water moving, because otherwise the macaroni will clump up. That water's pretty salty. We're looking for a higher boiling point than maybe normal water. It's going to help cook the mac and cheese a little more evenly. And we just used the small elbow macaroni for this one tonight. So 16 ounces, small elbow macaroni. So that water is going to move. I think we're good. We're going to set that off to the side. And so now we're going to start incorporating some of this cheese into the bechamel. So we're going to take the whisk, and little by little, you're going to take some of the cheese. I'll hold the bowl for you. It might be easier. And you can take some cheese, dump it in, and whisk away. I'm going to turn the heat back up to, I had it at low. It's going to go back to maybe medium low. Let me bring the camera up to you. So she's just going to keep incorporating more and more cheese. And didn't want to hit your elbow, sorry. You can do bigger handfuls than that. So there we go. There's a good handful. We're going to make sure we incorporate all that cheese into this bechamel. Here, I'll bring it over so you can see.
Malia. Can you give me a smart one?
So Suzy is going to take some more cheese.
One that's already open.
Put some on her hands. She's going to put some into the bechamel and put some on the counter. She's going to keep going and make sure that all incorporates in there. Yep.
It's on the table.
So you can see that bechamel is changing color. And once this last little bit of cheese is incorporated, we'll add brie at that point, and we'll kind of go with what we feel is necessary. And just looking at the color, I think we may end up going with some more cheddar too, because we want maybe a little more yellow.
Do you want to just dump it?
So dump the rest in. So that's our cheese sauce. The mac and cheese, the mac itself is still going here in the water. So make sure that's all the way up to high. This is going to go for probably, if the box is probably going to say something like 9-10 minutes. Let me see, yeah, 8 to 10 minutes. We're going to go a little less. We're going to go maybe 6-7 minutes because we don't want it fully cooked. What we don't want to do is turn that into mush. We want it to still have a little bite to it. There's going to be a lot of moisture in this sauce. It's going to continue to cook in the oven. So don't overcook your mac. Otherwise, it's nasty.
Should I keep whisking?
Yeah, she's going to keep whisking. We're going to add a little bit of brie. So I'm going to open the package here. And so this is the part you need to pay probably the most attention to the sauce, because you don't want it to break apart and get greasy. So an extra set of hands is great. If you're doing it all yourself, you might want to have this type of stuff pre-cut before getting into it. I am not a fan of the knife that Suzy picked, but it's nice and nice and dull. Just super dull, this one. All right, so our brie package is open. This one has a weird little thing on the side here. So I want to cut off the rind. So I'm going to go straight down the front here. And go straight down the back here. Remove the rind that we don't want to use. I'm probably going to use about half of this, the brie. And that'll probably be the flavor that we're looking for. We'll double check. So the other thing we're going to do is cut this into little bits, and we're going to add this in slowly and make sure that we don't leave any big lumps. So here we go. Susie's going to take a few pieces of brie, maybe 3 of them, add them in. Maybe 2, I guess, is what I handed her. And we're going to try and break this apart. It's going to melt, but the problem is it's going to want to kind of stick together in a clump, and we really want it to hit the heat and start to meld into this cheese sauce.
It's inside the whisk.
It is inside the whisk, and that's exactly why I love using the fork. So we're going to go maybe, oh no, it melted. Look at that. All right, so we're going to add some more. We're just going to keep doing that. While that's going on, I'm going to double check our mac. Give it a quick stir. Maria has a question. How thick should the sauce be? So we want it thinner than nacho cheese sauce, thicker than cream. If you thought of Alfredo sauce for like fettuccine Alfredo, a little bit thinner than that, because this cheese is going to thicken the sauce up, and we really want it to be able to coat all this mac, and it's going to end up evaporating a little bit, some of the moisture, and it's going to thicken as it cooks in the oven too. So we're going to add some more brie in. I'm going to do it for you while you're stirring. So we want to make sure that these pieces of mac don't stick to the bottom of the stock pot. There's 2 more for you too. So I'm doing a little quick field test. If you can't break it apart with your thumb, probably
I just tried it with hand.
not too bad. Let's see.
I just put
It is
the
done.
and the sauce went up and
So we don't want to wait too long here. It's done. We want to get it off of the heat right away. I'm going to drain this. You're going to keep going on that cheese sauce.
yeah, I used that other stuff.
So we don't rinse the pasta. We give it a good shake. And Maria just said she added some more milk, which is perfect because you just want it thin. And we'll bring you over and you can kind of be able to see the consistency of the sauce right now. So it's thicker than like just cream, but it's definitely thinner than like a nacho cheese sauce. Okay, so our cheese is hopefully done. We're gonna double check and make sure flavor-wise we're happy with it. So we want to put it here in the spoon, blow on it. You can kind of see there's the consistency of the sauce. And then you're going to use your pinky finger and taste it. What do you think, Suzy? For me, it's not salty enough. I can always add more salt. It's sweet, it's cheesy, it's creamy. We're going to add salt to this. And then it's going to get dumped right into this pot with the pasta. So Suzy's going to do that. Here we're going to turn the heat completely off at this point. Suzy will use this big spoon and she'll slowly dump in and stir into the pot as she's doing it. And let's see where we are. Go ahead and stop there. That looks fantastic. I think that is the right amount of sauce. So we didn't use all of our sauce, and that's okay. It's to the point just before it's like soupy. It'll be great, and it's going to thicken in the oven. So Coach Carrie said that she's now going to make this for dinner tomorrow. Say hi to Coach Carrie.
Hello.
And then the next thing we're going to do is transfer it to a baking dish, we're going to top this with breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese. Depending on how much breadcrumb you want, that would be the thickness of your dish. So we're going to go with a little less breadcrumbs and go with a thicker dish. If you want a lot of breadcrumbs and a lot of texture, you can go with a thinner one and you'll just spread more breadcrumbs around the top. But I think this will be the dish we're looking for here. So we're going to, since we're happy with the amount of cheese, we're going to move that off to the side. No, not the sauce. The sauce will stay on the stovetop. So we're going to kind of get our cutting board all situated here. And at this point, we're going to pour this right into our Pyrex. So I'm going to, it's going to be hot and a little awkward, so I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to come right in, and I'm going to use the spoon and bring it in.
Where are the breadcrumbs?
All right, so there is the base to the mac and cheese. If you want, you know what? Do you want to make it really super ooey gooey cheesy? You want to make it crusty?
Yeah.
Not ooey gooey cheesy? Or do you want both? We're making a decision. Okay, Suzy wants both. So we're going to make this ooey gooey cheesy. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take out some of this mac. I'm going to put it back in. Watch this. This is such a cool trick. So if you can fill up your baking dish about halfway, what we're going to do, here we go, you ready? This is cool.
Breadcrumbs might be down below.
It's a blue container with the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
So we're going to take some more cheese, right? We're going to make this ooey gooey. So I'm going to grate a considerable amount of cheese. I mean, it's probably a quarter of what just went into this cheese sauce. So we're going to take this and we're going to layer it right here. So this is not incorporated into a sauce, and that's where we'll get that stretch. That's kind of where we are. I think we're going to go with more. Let's do it.
What are you doing?
Cool. Let's do more. And here it comes. We're going to shake all of the cheese on here. Try and get all parts of it. And then we're going to top this with the remainder of the mac. So that goes. That's going to get spread out. We want kind of make sure that all of that cheese is covered. And that's going to be awesome. Now the breadcrumbs. We want to do a mixture of, these are Italian seasoned breadcrumbs that we're using tonight. You can use panko, that's no problem. And Roxanne, I will not grate my knuckles. The biggest things in Italian seasoned breadcrumbs are it has a little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion powder, and a little bit of dried parsley. That's it. Those are all flavors that'll work really well with what we're doing here. So we're going to take a little bowl. We're going to take some butter. We're going to melt the butter. So I'd call that maybe half a stick.
Like in the microwave?
In the microwave. Maybe 30 seconds at most. So it'll be breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese, and butter. That's simple. For this, we want to use this type of Parmesan. It's going to top and brown a lot better than the shredded Parmesan. So the grated one's going to work a lot better. And you can use either the plastic thing or those tubs that have the cheese. Either one's fine. Or shoot, if you have enough packets, you can get some of those pizza cheese, and that'll work on there. No problem. Do you eat boxed mac and cheese?
A lot.
When do you a lot? When do you eat boxed mac and cheese?
What?
When do you eat boxed mac and cheese?
What do you mean?
When do you eat like the Kraft? Like, do you eat it when I'm home? Like when I'm making dinner?
What?
Do you eat? So Allie is asking, so when you're not home, does your family eat boxed mac and cheese like peasants?
We have lots.
Oh boy, Susie's gonna show you that we have a lot of mac and cheese. So I used about a quarter of a cup of butter that we've melted. I'm gonna use about the same amount of breadcrumbs. I'm just gonna pour it in, but you can, if you want, you can measure it out. And then I'm gonna use about the same amount of Parmesan cheese. And now Susie's gonna show.
We have like 6 more boxes.
Yay! I hope that they.
Yummy.
I hope they go back bad before.
No, they're yummy.
All right, so we're gonna add about a quarter cup of breadcrumbs and about a quarter cup of Parmesan. It's gonna be. I mean, this is a cheese dish, right? So Susie's going to take the spoon and stir all of that together. We want it to be. We want that butter to be pretty liquidy, and we want to get any of those clumps out. So the butter's melted fully. We're gonna add some more Parmesan. I don't think I got to that quarter cup. And then depending on our texture of this sauce that we made, we may add some more breadcrumbs. And it also just depends on your style and how much crunch you want. So I'm gonna add more for sure. So we're Susie just said lots of crunch. So we're gonna go to about half a cup of breadcrumbs, quarter cup of butter, and about almost a third of a cup of Parmesan cheese. And that should give us the crunch we're looking for. So now we have this kind of paste, right? Let me show everyone. So here's the paste that we have, right? You want to make sure you have butter incorporated in it, otherwise it won't get that brownness that you're looking for. So we're going to take this paste, and instead of just glooping it right on, you're going to take it and use your fingers. So this will be the messiest part of the dish. So Susie's going to take her fingers and crumble it all over the top. And use 2 hands and go for it. Just go nuts. Yeah. As the butter starts to melt, as it cooks, it will end up flattening out a little bit, but we want to make sure that we're coating the entire top here. The other cool part is as the butter melts, it's going to actually incorporate into that top layer of the cheese. It's going to be really good. Go ahead. Things you can add to this, if you want to use a little less butter and you can use a little mustard, no problem if you want to incorporate that flavor. These Italian breadcrumbs already have a little garlic. You can add more garlic to this. You can add more onion powder if you want. I mean, you can kind of go in the direction that the rest of your dish is. You can do so many different things. If you were doing maybe barbecue, you could actually add a little bit of your dry rub into the breadcrumbs on top, and that would kind of help tie the two together. Or you can just leave it without. All right, we're losing a little bit of the breadcrumbs. Susie's foot's happy. All right, so there we go. I think we're in good shape. I just got told that what I said was gross. Thank you. So that's there. We're probably about 25 or 30 minutes away from being done. So this is going to go in the oven for about 25 minutes. And then we'll be done. So we'll come back in about 20 minutes. We'll do a quick saute on green beans. We'll check that chicken, and we'll see you in a bit. So bye for now. You want to say bye, Susie?